Hello, my name is Marie. Today we're facilitating a session on capacity building and how to build inclusive and participatory workshops and sessions. The title will be here for 45 minutes. The title of the session, Transferring Knowledge and Skills, Transforming Attitudes, How to Build Engaging, Participatory, and Impactful Dissemination workshops. We have 3 objectives today. The first one is to build on your knowledge of non-formal education, engaging and participatory methods, this both online and in person. Objective 2 is to equip you with multiplication and dissemination skills. So if you attend a workshop that you really appreciated and enjoy and you need or you want to transfer what you learned to your teammates, to your colleagues, to the rest of your NC, how can you do that? And the third objective is to equip you with tools for creating and organizing impactful workshops. And we'll go first through the essentials of non-formal education, so the different criterias, and then to the different sides of capacity building. So non-formal education has many different characteristics. Well, first of all, it's voluntary, and that's how it differs, for example, from formal communication. So it's not schools, it's based on the fact that people go there because they want to. It's accessible and inclusive, meaning it's adapted to anyone can come if they want to, and it shouldn't be too expensive, and it should also be accessible to everyone, and also thought in a way that every person's, also if they're not part of the majority, should feel included. It's learner-centered. That means that the program is really based on the learner, and the program can be adapted to the participants. It's based on the needs of a specific target group. So this means that non-formal education, each program is not every time for the same persons. So before designing a program, you need to make a need analysis, and you need to decide for whom you're making this program. It's an individual or group process, meaning that you rely a lot on group participation, also on individual learning. So in non-formal education, you generally always ask people also on their contributions and on their own learning processes. So it's both these individual learning process and the group learning process, because they also do it together with the group. I'm sorry. It's process oriented, meaning of course you have objectives of things you want to reach at the end, but what is important is not just this goal that you want to reach, but really much the process. How do you build your training? How do you involve people? How do you facilitate these processes? It's participatory, meaning it's not one person giving a lecture or a talk, but it's really much, again, facilitating group processes, taking the knowledge that is part of people and part of a group and managing to make this knowledge come through. And lastly is non-hierarchical. Of course, there are trainers, of course, there are people organizing, but they don't hold a superior position to the others. They're here really to facilitate these group processes and not to make any kind of discipline, also from the fact that it's voluntary. If people don't want to be there, they can leave, they have this freedom. So that's is non-hierarchical. And again, the trainers indeed are giving activities and are facilitating these processes, but not from a top-down manner. It's really coming from the group. Do you have any questions on these characteristics? Cool.
No.
Mhm. When we build the capacity building trainings, we always look at 3 aspects, which are knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So when we, yes, as I said, in non-formal education, we always look at these different sides. Um, Knowledge. So we can give some input, but the best way to facilitate this knowledge is really to organize group activities. I will give you resources with activities at the end of the talk. Um, in order for the reflections from your participants to really come from these group processes. So you're here to facilitate this knowledge, but not to give it as a trainer, not to give it from a top-down process, but really making sure that participants come to this knowledge on their own, if we want, but with activities that you facilitate. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Um, so some ideas of methods that facilitate this knowledge, for example, are case studies. So case studies is you look at something that happened, at a text, and you ask people uh, what they would do, what they can do. Simulations also can bring this knowledge because it allows people to really um, put themselves in the shoes of others, and this can bring this reflection process that come from themselves. The aspect on skills. This is really much project-based learning. So you ask people to do something and they learn by doing. So it's also this do-it-yourself method. And of course, the trainers also have more experience on how to do that, so they can also guide. And the last important element is attitudes. It's attitudes and behaviors. We can also call it values. Um, for this activities that facilitate this are project design and also role play. So role play can either be coming from the side of the participants, that they make their own role play that they want to play out, or from the trainers with different ideas of what to play out. Ideally, when you facilitate, let's say like in one workshop, you should um, best is to work on knowledge and skills. It's a bit hard to work on attitudes in 1 hour workshop, for example, but that's always important to consider if you're building several days trainings. You should always look at, okay, like what do I do for knowledge, what do I do for skills, and what do I do for attitudes and behaviors? So it's these three elements always coming together that should be considered. If I can give a bit of a more concrete example, if we look at inclusion, let's say we want to develop the competence of inclusion among youth workers, among people who build projects. The knowledge will be what is inclusion. So really understanding the concept of inclusion, what is it, and defining it together. The skills will be how do you build inclusive projects, and giving the skills and making them implement the skills of how do they build projects that are inclusive. And the behaviors and attitudes, values are really themselves. Are they inclusive now at the end of your workshop or a few weeks after the workshops? Having inclusive behaviors, and also the fact that they mainstream, so that they manage to put inclusion in all of the projects that they will organize. So mainstreaming accessibility and inclusion in all of their projects. So some tips to making workshops engaging. So you said a few in the first discussion. Point one would be really to break the ice with participants. So making sure that they can that they feel free to talk, that they feel comfortable with each other. This includes both breaking the ice activities, and if you have more time, if you have a few days, really team building. So online, this can be like Mentimeter as a tool. There's many other tools. It can be small group discussions, breakout rooms, can be little icebreaker games to make sure that people are engaged from the beginning and that they feel welcome to participants. Online, other things that are good, if you have a workshop online, to make sure that you acknowledge every person that will join. So if someone comes, even if they're late, next time that you finish your sentence or have a little break, to say hello, that they feel seen and welcomed to the place. In person, of course, it's easier to run icebreakers, name games, things related to the theme. Um, In the resources I will give at the end, you can find many icebreakers on different topics. Of course, ideally, you manage to find an icebreaker that is related to the theme of the workshop you want to give. Similar to non-formal education methods, of course, that's also non-formal education. Learner-centered knowledge. What I call here learner-centered knowledge is really making sure that you take what is in the group, and as a facilitator and trainer, you manage to bring out the important elements. So this happens in small group discussions, in debriefings, and again in activities, as I said earlier, role plays, simulations, case studies. So it's all things coming from the group and where you give elements for the knowledge to come, but it comes from them more than from you. And as a trainer, you manage to bring this knowledge out. As a facilitator, also what you can do very much and what facilitators should do is really ask questions. And we often hear like there's no stupid question, but I think as a facilitator, this applies even more. It means that it can be even important to ask questions about what do you mean with that? What do you mean with this word? Even if you know what it means, and even if if the group also knows, to ask for a clear definition, what do you mean by this? Asking for clarifications, also asking why. Why do you say this, or what makes you say this? Can really bring a lot of knowledge and a lot more discussion to the group. Even if it's not about having the answer. Like, of course, if you ask for a definition, everyone is going to think, oh, I know the answer. Why is that asked? And actually, it's very subjective. It's really bringing discussion. So asking questions that can, like, there's no stupid questions, especially when facilitating. Don't write too much on PowerPoints. So indeed, PowerPoints can be a great support, but make sure that people are listening to you and not reading the PowerPoint. So you can have keywords and maybe not more than that. PowerPoints, I think, are mostly online because in person we have it a lot less. The third point is direct engagement. So you can ask questions to the group directly to make them feel engaged, to engage them, either at the beginning as an icebreaker or during the whole workshop, to be sure that they're still there and that also they have this stimulation. When you talk about things, try to be as concrete as possible. Give examples so that people can relate to and can really understand you. You can also ask contributions to the group in terms of their past experiences on a topic, lessons learned, and really have group discussions so that people are engaged again. And a lot of the time, this works even better if you have a big group. This works even better in small group discussions. And last but not least, we talked about it with the skills, is really learner-centered skills. So where you encourage people to implement what they've learned in your workshop. So you should always keep a time at the end to practice the skills that you brought them. For example, today, like at the end, we'll have 10 minutes for you to really implement and build a workshop that you like to, or some knowledge that you like to transfer, so that you can apply so that people can apply what they've seen in your workshop and apply it and also remember it this way. Do you have any questions on this? Okay, then as I said, it's really about implementation. So we'll go on the implementation side of a workshop. For this, I will ask you to think about again the workshops that you thought of at the start. And this time more in terms of content. What content from these workshops, it can also be other workshops, what content from these workshops would you like to give to other people, either from your organization or either it can be friends. Think also to whom you would like to give this knowledge. So what is the content? What is it in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitudes? What is the main competence? So something short, no? Like, and also how? Like, how do you intend to to bring this content to them, and how do you intend to engage them? I wrote it as several questions, of course, but I think they're all to be seen together. Some really good resources are made by the organization called You Know Why, United Network of Young Peace Builders. Designing learning for peace is really good. I mean, that's more like advanced training design, but that's really good in terms of knowing what are your objectives for a clear competence that you want to develop, and also breaking these things in terms of like, for this competence, for example, fundraising, what is the knowledge, what are the skills, what are the attitudes? So it's really good to have this a bit more in mind. Kali, at the Active Citizenship Lab, we definitely talked about the manuals for the Council of Europe. Compass is a bit of the Bible of non-formal education in the context of human rights education. And there's a lot of activities that you can use about many different topics. It's not so much topics on running an organization, such as fundraising, project management. It's really much more knowledge, skills, and attitudes really based on values, and on values you need to be a human rights defender. And there's also really good the education pack, All Different, All Equal, from the Council of Europe, which is also a list of activities you can use on different topics. That's it. Thank you so much for being here today.